Unless a grain of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains just a grain of wheat. But if it dies, it produces much fruit. I think these words of Jesus reveal a fundamental truth that we all know, but perhaps we're not necessarily aware that we know it. So I remember during the summers of my college seminary days, I spent 4 summers coaching youth soccer, probably ages 8 to 12 or 13. Now, if there's one thing that is true of soccer, it is that to play the game, you have to run. And so that is exactly what I made my team do. For the first few weeks, we would run laps at the beginning, the middle, and end of practice. We would run for mistakes, for not listening, and just for fun. And throughout the practice, I would hear protests and complaints, and I'm sure the kids, by the end of the first couple of weeks, hated me and wanted to quit. But despite this, I would assure them that it would pay off in the long run, and they would become better soccer players, and, perhaps most importantly, we would win games. The same is true for any good athlete, musician, successful employee, or student. They will tell you that hard work and effort are required to be successful. You have to pour yourself out to reap the rewards down the road. You have to die to yourself. In the gospel today, Jesus speaks of his own passion and suffering, and that he is to be lifted up in his crucifixion. He knows he's going to die, but he also knows that it is in this death that he will draw all things to himself. It is in his dying that we are offered the gift of salvation. Christ's death takes on the very enemy, death itself, enters into this death so as to break its chains on the world. Christ lives this very message of the grain of wheat that must die to produce fruit. And so we are also called to enter into this as Christ did, daily by our own small sufferings, by our own death to self. And so, for example, at school we might undergo and suffer the death of our own popularity by choosing to sit with the kid who is bullied or has no friends. This death to popularity and favor will bring life to someone who may very well feel lonely, empty, or worthless. Or perhaps it's giving time on your day off for charitable work, taking an hour to put together meals for the poor. This is a death to our own time, right? Something that we don't necessarily want to do. It will require self-sacrifice of our relaxation, missing part of the ball game, or losing out on sleeping in. But by this death, we will be giving life to someone, whether or not we see the fruits in this life. We will be engaging in the call to the corporal and spiritual works of mercy, to love one another as Christ has loved us, and by which we will be judged. Christ's death has altered all things for eternity. Because of his death, his taking on that enemy, even death can now bring about life. It can lead to grace and mercy. And we can now participate in it by engaging in our own small death, our redemptive suffering. And I pray that all of you will choose to do so. I pray that as we enter into Holy Week next week, that all of you will choose to enter into Christ's suffering and death by your own lives. Do this by taking on some of the small crosses that we can use to die to self, and in the process, give new life to others. Christ died so that we might have life. Will we do the same for our families, friends, and even our enemies? A friend once told me these words to live by. We die forgotten these words and will take them with me wherever I go in the future. Will we be instruments of Christ's new life? Are we willing to die for love? Are we willing to die for Christ? Again, we die, Christ lives. This is what it means to be a saint. So I beg you all, become a saint.